On the All Things ABC podcast this week, we have the founder and CEO of the Pain-Free Performance Specialist Certification, America's biggest and fastest growing fitness and training education system, as well as having a new book, Pain-Free Performance, Move Better, Train Smarter, and Build an Unbreakable Body. Dr. John Rusin, welcome to All Things ABC.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hi, John. Noel here, founder of ABC. Very glad to have you on our podcast. I'm going to go straight into it. One of our taglines, our main tagline is that we add life to your day and days to your life. So for me, that's a very quick tagline and summary of what we're trying to achieve with people. So obviously we're trying to help people live longer and healthier, but within that longer life that they live, we want them to enjoy the moments along the way. So we want them to look better, feel better, perform better. We want them to have kind of enjoy the adrenaline rush of achievement. We want them to have gratitude about what their bodies are capable of doing. And with all of that led me to the introduction on your book. So on the introduction on your book, you mentioned there was two questions in it. One was you asked a group at a seminar, I think it was, put up your hands if you're in pain. And then, so many put up their hands. And then you asked the question, how many of you are feeling at your best or your most optimal right now? And it led to some strange results for you, we'll say. So I'd like to just open with that and get the conversation started around your introduction from your book.
We've run so many pain-free performance specialist certifications in the last 9 years. Not that I'm counting, but this year we're going to actually run our 1,000 two-day in-person certification course. So over 20,000 coaches that have come in and experienced our education, we ask the same question in the first 5 minutes every single time so we can cut the bullshit right away. We said, hey, how many of you guys are in pain? And everyone's like, no. Who's lying? Who's been in pain the last 3 months, the last 6 months? Who's been in pain the last year where you can't train optimally? It's almost 100% of the room. And we see that this is common, but every single time that I poll our people, I say, these are the best coaches. These are the best physical therapists. These are the best physicians. These are some of the highest end enthusiasts coming to our certification course, and they are the best of the best. They are the ones that have all the knowledge, have the experience. They're working with other people, but they're still in pain. They're still not moving optimally, and they are at risk of losing something that is very strong in your brand at ABC, which is physical autonomy, meaning that you're able to do whatever the hell you want to do for the rest of your life because you've trained it and you've earned the right to do it. And that is a sobering thing for many of our coaches that go through our coursework, because this is why they're there. This is why our clients are here. If everyone was pain-free and everyone was lean and jacked and tan and benching 315, then we'd be out of a profession. But that's not the reality today. We are dealing with more pain and injuries than ever before, some inside the gym, of course, some out. And we are dealing with a chronic health epidemic where we are the front lines in terms of healthcare and personal trainers to be able to go in and start combating some of these chronic lifestyle conditions.
More pain now than ever before, John. But there seems to be more gyms. There seems to be more talk for online and stuff like that. Why are we, and even us coaches and stuff like that, and I would have put my hand up if I was in that seminar being in pain. Why is that?
As much as we think the fitness industry is growing, I think it might be lateralizing. I'm not sure if we're getting to the end consumer more than we were maybe 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. The data just doesn't support that. Looking at some of our data crunches over the last year, only 4% of the American population is actually strength training today. 4 out of 100 people are actually strength training. And all of a sudden you think about, well, what about the other 96% of people? What about everybody else? And then the people that are coming into the gym for the first time, what are they experiencing? I think it's a combination between people not necessarily knowing what to do or having way too much information and not knowing what to do because of the inundation of poor quality information and the age of Instagram influencing. So we are getting it from all sides. We're having, hey, don't strength train, don't squat, bench, and deadlift, don't do any weight training from your physician. And then you go to your physical therapist and they tell you not to exercise because you have lower back pain. And then you get in on Instagram and you go, wow, that person just did 32 working sets on bench press and they look like a Greek god. Maybe I should do that workout. And all of a sudden, the people that are there needing the support the most are actually getting the least required support in terms of actually getting healthy, getting moving, getting pain-free, and actually being able to have a physical practice for their life. And this is a very frustrating place to be because we know the power of exercise. We know the power of strength and conditioning and reprofiling a human movement system, but it tends to be something that is still a secret in our industry today, what our worth actually is. And that's one of the biggest reasons that, Pain-Free Performance does all the education that we do. But also I decided to go out and try to mainstream the idea of being able to rebuild a movement system, to be able to smart strength train and be able to have some physical autonomy with your own self with the book.
John, another thing that stood out to me in the book was a line where you define performance. So you go into detail your definition of performance, but essentially performance equals health, which I love because so many people, especially general population, when they see the word performance or they see it as a tagline for a gym or anything like that, they associate it with the elite and elite athletics and elite population. For you, what I loved was it defined it as health and how your body supports your life in and out of the gym and all of the other things. Do you want to talk about that a bit more?
Well, I came from high performance. I spent the first 10 years of my career dealing with professional Olympic sport athletes. That's my specialty. That's what I did. But through that decade, I learned that really nothing else matters if my athlete is hurt, if they're in pain, or systemically if they're unhealthy and they're unrecoverable. So I became a manager of how healthy I could get that athlete in their off season so they could just go out and do their thing without inhibition. And that was an eye-opening decade for me because I thought getting into the world of high-end sports performance, I have all these degrees, I'm Dr. So-and-so, we're going to do all this cool shit. And in all actuality, it was like, how do we keep my athletes healthy? Because that's all that matters. And if we can do that, all of a sudden we potentiate the rest. We allow them to go out and chase their dreams and to perform at their highest levels. But I think that the commonality between what I do today, a vast majority is health and longevity focused training for adults and even people in active aging populations. How do we take those same principles of being health first and health centric in terms of a training approach, and then allow us to actually get after the goals that they were in there for the first place? I think one has to go in front of the other. Many times people throw out the idea of health altogether and they go, it's hypertrophy bodybuilding at all costs. It's strength and powerlifting at all costs. It's endurance sport at all costs. And then they lose their ability to do that and they lose the ability to do what they love. But I've always been a believer if we can lay the foundation with a solid movement system, with getting out of pain, with being healthy orthopedically and systemically, then in a matter of even a couple weeks or a couple months, we have the ability to optimally achieve so much higher in that specific goal set than we would have if we were just trying to co-manage or just juggle a bunch of health conditions on top of performance metrics.
Okay, there's a lot covered there. If you are meeting a client for the first time, how do you get that message across?
The first thing that I do is we are a training-centric brand. So we're going to go right into a training session, of course, after we have all the data and we have like their intake forms. But we are going to go right into an intake session that looks at qualifying their human movement system, their squat, hinge, lunge, push, pull, carry, and rotational-based patterns. And then we're going to look at some key developmental positions that they should be able to gain and maintain. And then we do a screen that is not really a screen. They think they're training. They're like, man, my abs abs are burning, my ass is on, like this is awesome. This is exactly why I signed up. And all of a sudden at the end of a 45 to 55 minute session, we have all the data in terms of their movement system qualifications, their weak links, their linchpins, their pain points, and then also an orchestration of a plan moving forward on how we train them effectively moving forward and how we bring up their weak links and actually strengthen them with a more qualified approach in terms of their prep and also their recovery. And we're able to put all the pieces together very, very quickly. But it all starts with the movement system. Getting somebody moving is extraordinarily empowering. So we shouldn't just be clipboarding everyone all the time. What we need to be doing is giving them the ability to move, being able to empower that movement, whatever scale it may be at, and then be able to have a more targeted approach on how we train that day, especially the physical characteristics of strength, and then how we actually build it up over time. Because in terms of the getting pain-free, we need to have time at our advantage. This stuff doesn't happen overnight. Yes, we can make different movement modifications. Yes, we can make lateralizations of exercise selection. But long-term, we just need to build up those pieces and strengthen them in order to orchestrate them back into that complete movement system.
You've mentioned the word system there. That's one thing I've picked up from you a lot over the years, is both having systems and having exercise priorities and exercise order. Do you want to discuss any of that?
Systems are everything. If you are a coach, what you shouldn't be doing is trying to reinvent the wheel every single time you have a new client come onto your management list. What we need to be doing is falling back on the systems that are predicated on principles. So systems for us are something called a 6x6 protocol. This is the one that I will use most commonly. This means that we are going to get exposure to all 6 foundational movement patterns: squat, hinge, lunge, push, pull, carry, a minimum frequency of 2 times per week. That's the first 6. The second 6 is the 6 physical characteristics of health and longevity: power, strength, hypertrophy, cardio and conditioning, mobility, and athleticism. We need exposure to each and every one of those 6 throughout a training week. So this 6x6 protocol creates the foundation of every single type of athlete or client that I am working with. And this is something that is the system in itself. We know very well if we can blueprint the 6x6 protocol out, then we can start specializing on somebody's unique movement system profile, their goals, their training history, their injury history. We can do a lot of different manipulations, but I think that people specialize a little bit too early and they try to get too fancy and they try to create exercises or create solutions when really the biggest solution for a vast majority of people out there are simply doing the basics extraordinarily well and then being able to scale with confidence.
Fantastic. Within the 6, obviously you've said 6x6, but 2 things came up there for me. Everyone goes after strength, hypertrophy, and cardio. But you've also mentioned power and athleticism. How important are them two?
Power and athleticism, those are going to be the 2 physical characteristics that are lost most quickly due to quote unquote normalized aging. There's nothing normal about losing your physical capacities, whatever they may be. But I think the data will show anywhere from age 30 to 31, we'll have this natural reduction anywhere from 2 to 5% per year on our power capacity, the ability to move fast, the ability to accelerate, and more importantly for the average person out there, the ability to decelerate and be able to protect your positions. And this is something that we've filter into every single training program. And we will start something with something called a power primer. It's essentially moving on a skill and learning a new skill using some unconventional tools or even body weight to be able to move our body through space, move faster than what we're already moving with, and being able to elicit acceleration and deceleration. Things like kettlebells, things like landmines and bands and body weight-based movement. Those are super awesome because the goal isn't to just stack weights on a barbell. The goal is to move well, to connect your body, to move fast, decelerate and hit the brakes even faster, and be able to learn new motor skills. And I think that that is something that I'll get on Instagram all the time. I'll do some sort of athletic power movement. People will be like, what muscle does this train? I'm like, it trains every muscle. Like I'm doing like a landmine snatch. What are you talking about? And it just like doesn't hit them that it's not old school bodybuilding or it's not a squat, bench, or a deadlift, a barbell. So I think that power and athleticism is super untapped, but that is something that I think is equally as important to strength and body composition and muscle mass when we're looking at extending the quality of people's life, not just the days of their life.
John, listen to you there. And like, if I know when around 10 years ago, I'd see ABC was 2-3 years in business, I'm like, geez, to get into something like that, I have to do all these extra courses. I went back to college, and one course I did was Joe DeFranco's CPBS course. And I heard you on his podcast, and you have all your qualifications and years of training. And then you were talking about what you want to see in a coach. And you said you'd hired 30 odd people, but you didn't know what half their certifications were. What do you look for in a coach?
First thing is going to be human connection, the ability to speak and lead and have people believe in you. I think that it's a personal quality that many people possess and some people don't possess, but we can all get better at. But being able to be that bright, shining star when you walk into the room, you want to brighten a room. Because let's be honest, like we are exercising people that most likely don't want to be there. So like you got to convince them that this is going to be a fun experience. You're going to be able to DJ. You're going to be able to know people's kids' names, and you're going to be able to be a community member. I think buying into the mission and the system and being a good personality person, that has got to be number one. But I think the urge to want to get better over time, I see this all the time in our certification. And I'm a big believer in education. I'm somebody that's been in the university way too many years in my day. But I don't think it's the be-all, end-all of everything, because I will tell you, I've had thousands of coaches come through our certification course that have fancy 4-year degrees, master's degrees. Some of them have PhDs. When you get them on the training floor, they can't move themselves, and they certainly don't know how to manage another person. So the ability to want to learn, to want to be mentored, to want to continue your education with experience, with mentorship, but then peeling back the onion on different types of courses and going in and actually investing in them, I think that's a telltale to somebody's career capital and their success. You know, I came up, I didn't have a whole lot of money. Every single dollar that I had early on was going to continuing education that I couldn't afford. And it was the best thing that I did in my entire career because I was surrounding myself with other coaches that were also like me. And I was also getting taught by the best people in the world. And I was able to go in and learn and experience and then implement. I think that was just such an advantage. But it's hard. You know, it's hard to be able to have that maturity early on. But that's where that mentorship comes in. So we have to be open-minded. We want to have to learn. And I think that if we are open-minded, we want to learn, and you are the ability to really light up a room, then you have something called the ability to gain career capital. There's a lot of problems today in our industry where coaches will come in and they'll go out within 6 months. 50% of trainers in America won't make it 6 months. And the ones that do make it 6 months, the ones that do make it past 3 years, the ones that make it to the decade, they can become a career personal trainer, a career strength coach, a career health expert. And that's where we need to be getting towards. Our profession is so green today is just need more professionals that are patient with the practice and they are able to really cut their teeth and get good at something. We don't get good at something over a couple months or even a couple years. It will take a little bit of while, and it's like that in every profession. You know, personal training and coaching is no different.
In terms of, we're talking about characteristics and traits of like the modern coach, you feel like that might change from like training Gen Pop to training like more higher level or elite athletes?
I think that the skill sets are going to be the same. And the more and more as our industry continues to evolve, the more we're getting towards a more health-centric and longevity-based approach. You're hearing athletes talk more about, hey, it's cool to play 10 years, to play 15 years, as opposed to sputtering out in 3 years. It tends to be the topic that I think will bring us through the next 10 years of our profession, which will be whether you're managing athletes, whether you're managing adults, or whether you're managing active agers. I think the health-centric approach is going to be the thing that we do. But in terms of the physical characteristics themselves, this is the mistake that most people will make. They'll go, oh, I got an athlete. Like we all wish that we worked with athletes. I think that that's why we got into the profession. We were like super excited, like I was, to go out and work with athletes. And all of a sudden we get excited and we're working on 40-yard dash times and vertical jump and all this stuff. And then the guy has knee pain, his ankles don't move, and his lower back is blowing out. And you're like, what the hell are we even doing here? So I think that when we start to look at the principles of movement systemization, but also the principles of just deeper health in terms of a well-rounded approach to being a healthy human, I think that it is going to come closer together, elite sports performance and general fitness population. I think it's going to look more similar in the next 10 years than it has in the previous 10 years. And I am managing right now a client list that is professional athletes in multiple sports here in America. And I have people in their 80s as well. And they are all using the same base 6x6 systemization as a starting point. But I think that if you were to look at the programs and you were to look at them side by side, you'd be like, wow, these are totally different, but they're still adhering to the same principles. The way in which we're emphasizing based on the individual is actually more important than the individual specialty.
John, everything you've said there really resonates with us. It really aligns with us as a brand and us as people and as coaches, like very similar to yourselves, strength and conditioning coaches who worked with elite Gaelic footballers and hurlers here in Ireland at inter-county level and high level club players here. But again, there's very little professional sport here in Ireland besides rugby, besides some people who make it in soccer or in golf. There's very, very little professional sport here in Ireland. So essentially your main client base is going to be general population. The great thing now about general population is, as you've just said, there does seem to be a hunger for the train like an athlete type training, which is what our whole brand is based upon. So first of all, things very much align with you, which is great. Second thing, there's a huge trend now towards things like Hyrox and other type of hybrid athlete type events. How do you see those things aligning with our industry now?
It's a tough one. I think that they will be a flash of popularization. You know, here we definitely seen the last number of years that Hyrox is more mainstreamed here in America. But I honestly don't believe that looking at the whole industry, it's not going to stand close to the average person going to the gym. This is still a fraction of a percent of people that are actually training. But I do think that there is an idea behind trying to be a hybrid athlete. I just don't love the term, and I don't like the execution of the hybrid athlete style because they aren't hitting all the characteristics. It's just really specializing in 2, if not 3. I guess that's better than just 1, but why not go out and do as much as we possibly can to have health and longevity. So I do believe that if somebody wants to go in and do something, I have 2 to 3 clients right now that are prepping for Hyrox, but they're doing it because their buddies are doing it. They're not going to try to be like a professional Hyroxer. They're going out for the community aspect. And I think that is extraordinarily important. If you have a community behind you, you know, we know that, you know, the literature will say that you're going to be more likely to stay with that physical endeavor. But a community can be made in a lot of different ways. It doesn't have to just be suffering in a CrossFit class together. There can be a lot of different ways to be able to create that community. But I do believe that the hybrid style of training, you know, the lift and run, I think there's something to it. At least people are doing cardio and strength training. But in my opinion, it's just not enough in terms of getting our clients to the level that they need to be when they hit their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond. It's just closer, but not close enough.
With that, John, and with the knowing that they need to be doing more, at the same time, you obviously want your clients to do well in Hyrox. A lot of people will go, well, do well in Hyrox, I need to do more Hyrox sims, I need to make it exactly as close as I can to Hyrox. When you're training these 2 to 3 people that you have doing that, how much of it is Hyrox and how much of it is the print? Obviously, a lot of it is your principles, but how does that balance work?
We learned this in CrossFit. The way that you compete for CrossFit is not the way that you train for CrossFit. And people had this totally wrong for like over a decade. I managed people for the CrossFit Games in my career, and the way that we were doing things was far more intelligent, and it was far more well-rounded to keep them healthy and actually bring up capacities than just going in and trying to do pseudo competition every single training session. So for Hyrox specifically, we'll scratch that itch. We'll do it 1 to 2 times per week. We'll get somebody into a position where they're like, oh, this feels like Hyrox. And they're like, all right, cool. Like, at least we got that done this week. And then the rest of the training is to get stronger, is to work on their body composition, is to work on their chronic weak links and their pain points, and simply get them ready to be healthy as they go into competition and be able to withstand that stress. So I do think that there's an emotional capture that we can give these athletes. We can give them the feeling of doing something, but not every single training session. You know, imagine in soccer, if you just went out and played every single day, games every single day, never had a practice, you'd probably really suck by the end of the season.
Yep.
Well, it's the same as the saying, you don't train for a marathon by doing marathons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Only Sean does that.
God, it's not wrong. That's why I put my hand up to start the session for being in pain. I did it the wrong way. John, just going back to your principles and stuff like that and your training, one of the things that is probably overlooked is the breathing, the bracing, and you talk about the importance of movement quality. When does the breathing come into that for, let's say, your barbell lifts, your squats and stuff like that, and the bracing? Is it all come at one moving pattern for moving quality first and then more bracing, breathing, or how do you incorporate that?
It's a skill that we'll teach square one, day one. And that is the one thing, if I'm like, hey, how do I keep this client healthy in the gym today, even on their first session? If I give them the requisite ability to be able to control their shoulders, hips, and core together, if I have them learning the ability to at least exchange air in a proper way without giving up their tension and recruitment muscularly, I know that they're going to be able to go out and be able to withstand some stress, especially when we start to introduce load. But I think that this is something, as a coach, I thought I was teaching the brace correctly. I thought I was doing all this thing to a world-class level. And then you get around people that really specialize in a certain thing, like world-class power lifters, and you're like, wow, I don't know shit. I had this epiphany. You know, I have been teaching breathing and bracing mechanisms for over a decade at this point, and I go in and lift with Westside Barbell world record holder, and he's acting like I don't know anything because I'm weak, I'm little, and I can't lift 1,000 pounds. And he wanted to show me, and he goes, hey, hug me right now. And I was hugging him from the back. It was super awkward. It's just me and him in the gym, so it was cool. And he goes, and he goes like that, and he breaks my hug, and he goes, you see that core? You see it all turn on at once? That's how you lift 1,000 pounds. And I was like, ha. And I was like, oh shit. Yeah, that's a lot different than what I was doing. And then we go back in and we relearn. And I think that pain-free performance, the way in which we're teaching the breathing and the bracing mechanism now in a step-by-step approach with co-contractions of the shoulders, co-contractions of the hips, breathing in through the nose, bracing through the core, sipping through the mouth, and then moving. That has been something that has translated extraordinarily well for our coaches that go through our coursework. And for all of my clients, it's been a game changer, to the point where if strength is something that they're looking at improving, people are getting PR record levels in a matter of a couple sessions because this is such a powerful performance enhancement tool specifically to heavy load and strength. And I think that the stronger and the more stable we can be managing the ball and socket based joints, the stronger and the more stable we can be at the core and pillar complex, the more that we can direct force towards musculature, reduce the stress on the joints, specifically the spine, and it's a performance enhancement tool and an injury prevention tool in one.
Does the bracing change based on the exercise? So, for example, if you had goblet squats for 10 to 15 reps compared to a barbell squat for 3 to 5 reps, are you 100% bracing 1 rep up for both, or does it change?
This is a great question. So breathing and bracing need to move up and down based on the activity at hand. And we get these camps in our industry today that are like, no bracing, it's all reactive bracing. That's all you have to do. And then they go to deadlift and it looks like they're about to break their back in half, like their fishing pole is about to snap. And you're like, I don't think that's good. And then you go, hey, if you want to lift heavy, you need to brace maximally. And people are doing the Valsalva maneuver and doing things like goblet squats for 25 reps at a time, and they pass out because they can't even exchange air or breathe like normal human beings. And it has to be a dimmer switch. So when you're going for max effort lifts, like, you would be dumb to be able to try to exchange air. It just doesn't work that way. It's more moving parts where we want to be the most centrally stable. So that doesn't work. So anywhere from 1 to 3 reps, we're really thinking about taking those reps on a single breath, because that's where we can be the most stable. As soon as we get over 3 reps, into the 8 reps, into the 25 plus reps, we need to actually exchange air to be able to continue on and not have an occlusion effect on the localized active musculature. So we just want to have a minimal effective brace to maintain biomechanical positions, but also be able to oxygenate our system during it. So we see this with, I mentioned the goblet squat, but Pain-Free Performance does something called the Goblet Squat Challenge. And we really like it to be able to do 50% of your body weight for 25 unbroken reps with good form. And this is something that it's like, oh, that seems like a lot of reps. But all of a sudden, people that are really good at breathing and bracing, people that have a movement system that is really uninhibited, and ones that are relatively strong in terms of their body weight versus their strength levels, do extraordinarily well with one of these metrics. We have people moving into the 40s, 50s, 60s, 73 is the all-time record. And it's because they're able to brace, they're able to breathe, high amounts of movement quality, high amounts of skill, and it's something that is a protective mechanism. When you can do all of those things, it means that you're a better athlete. It means that you have better skills. It means that you have better load capacity. And all these things come together, and that's what I would deem functional. You know, it's like you can do all of these things because all the pieces are working together, not against each other.
John, just on that, like, you went through 3 different types of breathing techniques in your book, and I was just interested to see, like, would you have a certain breathing technique for clients that, like, might have a special consideration, like pregnancy or low blood pressure or something like that?
So the breathing techniques, there's a whole chapter on breathing in the Pain-Free Performance book, but there's certain techniques that I'll use based on kind of like the goals at hand, not specific client avatars. But I think like your question's more at like, hey, should we be doing heavy Valsalva maneuvers for pregnant ladies or post-pregnancy? Most likely that's not going to be in the cards, but that shouldn't be in the cards anyways, because I don't know the last time that I 1RM deadlifted a pregnant lady. That's probably just not going to fit into your goal schemes for the programming itself. So many times you'll fall back into the traditional strength schemes or the functional hypertrophy 8 to 15s, and that will naturally have them exchanging. But interestingly enough, as we go through more and more coursework with Pain-Free Performance, we see that we get a lot of pre and postnatal certified coaches coming through. We even have OBGYN docs coming through our system, and we get a lot of really great feedback and data from them, because essentially when we're talking pelvic floor, when we're talking the ability to rebuild the connectivity between the 4 layers of the abdominal cavity plus the shoulders and the hips, this is essentially all deemed something that we need for life. Whether you're a man or a woman, this is essentially just going in and doing things the right way. And I think that's super liberating for people to hear, because we are strong, we are stable, we are able to do these things. But I think that when we lack the skills to actually connect the most important portions and regions of our body, then everything becomes a bigger problem, especially if you are in some of these niche populations.
John, you talked there about pre-fatigue and higher reps and stuff. I do want to talk about, a mindset shift towards longevity, but just kind of half in that topic. I've heard you talk before about kind of pre-fatigue in warm-ups and stuff before doing bigger lifts, which seems a little bit different to the mindset of coming into the gym going, well, you want to be as fresh as you can before your power and your strength to get your max effort and stuff like that. But there seems to be more of a shift towards, like I've heard you talk before about, 3 sets of 25 glute bridges, variations with bands, and like really, really feeling before you start that. What is the thinking and the mindset behind that?
I wouldn't call it pre-fatigue. Pre-fatigue is
Okay.
a dirty word, Sean. It's a dirty word for every egotistical maniac and power lifter out there that just wants to hoist as much weight as humanly possible.
Yes.
But There will be different protocols that we'll use, like mechanical primers as your first loaded movement of the day. That's something that we'll routinely use in my programming style because it allows us to extend the warm-up. It allows us to drive more localized blood flow into the supporting structures, usually the posterior chain, and allows us a little bit more time and heat to lubricate some of the joints, knees, hips, lower back, shoulders. And that ends up being a performance enhancement tool. I think when I hear the word pre-fatigue, people go, oh, you're going to be tired before you go squat. It's like, man, if you're tired before you go squat because you did 3 sets of 20 on glute bridges, we need to have some different conversations about your cardio, your conditioning, and your general health status. Many times when we start to put in these types of mechanical primers, anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks, people will be like, oh, this is a novelty stimulus to the system. And maybe they are a little bit pre-fatigued. But every single time, people will get past that 3-week period of the acclimation phase, and they'll be like, wow, I feel so much better going into my big strength lifts of the day. And they're able to be fitter in that point in time. So they're going to be able to exceed their performance expectations when it comes into the external load on a specific movement pattern. I'll be one as an example. Every single time, I'll probably try to go in and pull and push PRs maybe 1 time or 2 times per year. It's always going to be periodized in more of like a cycled plan where we'll have like mobility stability, we'll have a hypertrophy, we'll have a strength of performance, and then we'll cycle that a couple times before I go in. I would never go in and try to pull a deadlift without ever priming my system mechanically or neurologically. I would never try to hoist a squat or a bench press without doing this anymore because you feel so good after being able to feel optimal in terms of your movement system really being in alignment that it becomes something that's a non-negotiable. I've seen this with the vast majority of my clients as well. It's something that they depend on to feel good. And as soon as you feel good, nothing else really matters because once we feel good and we are able to go in and perform at our highest rate, I think people stick with it for a long time. But that first couple of weeks, people are like, oh, this is different. Different's not necessarily bad. We just need to make it through like any other skill.
John, could you give us some, for our listeners and any potential coaches listening, what does that look like in reality? So, for example, you're going for a PB on a deadlift. What are you doing in the lead up to that PB attempt?
Yeah, so a session would start with more of a hip emphasized 6-phase dynamic warm-up sequence. It should probably take about 10 minutes. And then from there, we're going to do some sort of neurological potentiation, meaning that we're going to go after power directly. We're going to try to match the force plane. So if a deadlift is more of a horizontal force vector in terms of the mechanical movers, we're going to go at things that are in the horizontal plane of motion. Things like a broad jump would be a really good example. Keeping the volume really, really low there, but being intensity super high, effort super high. Probably going in and getting anywhere from like 5 to 8 of those jumps in. And then if we need a little bit more, because many times people are dealing with just some chronic pain and injuries or just some chronic positional work that we are sitting here right now. I've been sitting here for a little while and I'm like, man, I really need to get out of this position. That's going to be many people. So we'll go in and start to prime at the hips specifically with mechanical priming, which is higher reps, lower load, constant tension, time under tension around 45 seconds. So that would be something like glute bridges or hip thrusts or doing things with bands. We're not going to go in and hip thrust 405 for 20. That's not what we're talking about here. It's almost like activation drills where we're getting high amounts of mind-muscle connection, very specific to an acute area of the body. And that tends to be the glutes. And if we can get all of the glutes firing simultaneously, that's going to be really, really nice. So we would go in and do that, probably like 3, maybe 4 sets. Sometimes I'll go jumps and then priming at the hips with some glute work, and we'll go back and forth a couple times. This should take like 5 to 7 minutes. And then at that point in time, we'd go in and we'd use a continuous ramp scheme to be able to go in, not pre-fatigue the system in the actual lift, but go in and try to hit it. So it would be going up, say if my goal is to go in and hit 495 on the deadlift for a 1, I'd be going like 135, 225, 315, 405, 455, and then I'd hit maybe 1 to 2 sets at the top to try to reach that top end 100% RM.
on that, then your squat, hinge, lunge, and different things you're talking about, your different phases of warm-ups. Do you do ratios in your program in terms of chest to back? You talk about the people neglecting before posterior compared to anterior. Do you believe in ratios of like 2-to-1 back to chest kind of thing?
Yes, I audit every single program that I've ever written based on our recommended ratios. And these are starting points. They're not absolutes. Everyone gets bent out of shape about this recommendation. But it's 3-to-1 pull to push ratios. And this is total amount of volume throughout a training week. And the way that we're calculating this volume is by the amount of reps that are done. Every rep is created equally. That is extraordinarily important. A banded face pull is the same as a 1RM bench press in terms of a rep. So when we're thinking about distributing a 3-to-1 ratio between pull and push, it simply means that we're going to be doing more reps in the pull pattern, whether that be horizontal or vertical, rows or pull downs. It's all the same in terms of trying to get more emphasis on the back side of the body and a little bit less on the front side. It doesn't mean that we don't bench press. We absolutely do. It doesn't mean that we don't do push-ups and dumbbell press and all this stuff. We absolutely do that. But we have more of a performance mindset in terms of our push patterns, meaning that we're most likely going to hit them in lower rep schemes, higher intensities. And that is how the muscles in terms of the fiber orientation and the fiber types are best trained with this type of structure. So that's a 3-to-1 ratio at the upper body. I also like a 3-to-1 ratio at the lower body between hinge and squat. So we are going to be hinging a ton. And it's not just deadlifts all the time. We're going to be doing different variants of the hinge, whether it be deadlifts, whether it be RDL variations, whether it be single leg or asymmetrical stance at the lower body variations. And then we want to actually break it into more direct glute work and more direct hamstring work as well. So we are doing a ton of hinging and posterior chain work versus the amount of targeted anterior chain work that we're doing. And the thing about the lower body ratios, it's not as straightforward as the upper body ratios. It's like either you pull or you push. That's pretty straightforward. At the lower body, we can actually be stacking these ratios towards the posterior chain by going in and training things like the lunge pattern, things like split squats and Bulgarian split squats and lateral lunges with more of a hip emphasis. And I think that that will allow us to target the glutes and the hamstrings working together and really be one of those strong posterior line stability factors that most people are in need of.
John, I'm very conscious of your time. So I just want to talk one thing that ABC is big on is longevity and the mindset shift towards longevity. How do you get that buy-in factor from people when sometimes they come in and go, I just want to look good, and they're not thinking 10, 20, 30 years down the road?
It's going to be a sobering thing for many people. And we want to, as coaches, be able to pay forward our experiences, managing a lot of people through life stresses, through life changes, dealing with health issues, dealing with changes that they are pushed to do something different if they want to continue on. And everyone needs to realize that sometimes we need to go through the struggles ourselves. And it's hard to have that initial conversation. It's like you have to give the people what they want, but also what they need. But I think these two things are closer than we think. So many times people will come in with the goals of like, I just want to lose 20 pounds. I just want to gain some muscle. I just want to have a good summer and look sexy on the beach. But is that really what it's after? And I think that as we get to know our clients a little bit deeply, as we spend more time with them, I mean, who spends more time with these people than our personal trainers and coaches? Like, we are the third place. You know, it's like work, home, the gym with us. So we tend to get to know our people and their deep whys a little bit more, but this isn't something that's happening on day one. I think a mistake that people will make is like, I'm going to make you healthy today. And they're like, I just want to lose 20 pounds. Like, I'm doing okay. I think that we need to move into it slowly, and we'll start to chase down some of these goals, and they don't necessarily know either. I think that's a big issue where it's like the newbie personal trainer or the green personal trainer will try to tell their clients everything that they know, when the client's just looking for a workout. The client's looking to feel good that day, and if they can do both of those things, awesome. So I think the way that we layer our communication and we start to shift and we start to use the feedback that we're getting from our clients, we can open up and peel back that onion very quickly when it comes to health and longevity focus. And when people start feeling good, when they start training, when they start exercising, they got the endorphin rush, the dopamine hit. That's the time to start going, hey, you feel this? You see what you're doing here? Showing the progress, the process, showing their progress, and then seeing these wins stack up to go, what's next for us? It's being able to do this forever. I think that is super liberating for people, because once you're feeling good, I know anything that makes me feel good, I want to gravitate back to every single time. And I want to go deeper and deeper on that so I can get the most out of it. Training is no different, and talking to your clients is no different. But we can't be force feeding the idea of, I'm going to make you healthy today. It's a long-term process, and exercise, it never ends. This is something that we want to be doing for life.
John, I've wasted not wasted, because if she hears me, she'll kill me, but I've spent a lot of my money this year on getting married and stuff. So I won't be able to go to the States anytime soon. But for people over maybe this side of the pond, is there any way they can get involved in getting the pain-free performance specialist certification? And B, how do they get your book?
Head over to painfreetraining.com. We do virtual online pain-free performance specialist certifications, and they are awesome. And it's an extended curriculum, lifetime access, and you get the pain-free performance specialist certification credential right there. And I think we may be making our way over to your neck of the woods here in 2026. No promises, but it is going to be in the works. And then for the books, anywhere books are sold, but Amazon is going to be your best bet if you're ordering online. Country specific, so if you're in there, go to your Amazon based on your country, type in pain-free performance, John Rusin, and you should be able to be locked and loaded and ready to go with the resource.
Brilliant. John, thank you very much for your time. And we'll leave it there for this week's episode of the All Things ABC podcast. We'll have all those links in our show notes as well. That's it from the four of us. Take care.